AW Learn is Advertising Week's year-round video-on-demand continuing education platform.
Doesn't matter how many times you fail, you only have to be right once.
Our collections of chapter-based videos organized into smart tracks and highly refined courses provide discovery paths to the industry's brightest minds from across the globe.
The solutions are now widely available.
AW Learn features best-in-class thought leadership, the latest industry trends, and indispensable knowledge that will supercharge your professional development.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Univision stage. It's now time for our 11 o'clock panel, the Marketing Society's Elephant in the Room.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Margaret Molloy. I am the Global Chief Marketing Officer of Siegel+Gale, and I'm also the Chair of the Marketing Society here in New York. We are a global membership-based organization, and we're thrilled this week to have celebrated our first birthday in New York. Now, when one celebrates a birthday, it's often timely to be reflective. So we set ourselves an ambitious target to really deal with meaningful issues. Because as the Marketing Society, our purpose is to inspire bold marketing leadership globally. And we do this in part through event programming. This morning, we have recruited 5 brave marketing leaders. And the challenge we gave to them was to share. What is the elephant in the room? So for the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to go to the dark place. We're going to make the invisible visible. Let me introduce my panel, and then we're going to be quick fire. Here's how this thing works. My colleague Siobhan in the front is our master timekeeper. Each of my panelists have no more than 3 minutes to share their elephant. And then we get a chance to be reflective as a collective group. So who do I have? I have Doug Melville of TBWA. Next we have Chris Villarreal from Marcus, Jodi Harris from Anheuser-Busch, Jason Chabib from Diageo, and my colleague and the chair, and indeed the chief executive officer of the Marketing Society from London, Gemma Greaves. Shall we get started?
Yes.
Doug, what is your elephant?
All right. How's everybody doing today? My elephant in the room is equity and diversity, right? It's about the money. I have a money gun prop and it's not even shooting. Hold on. The front row is going to get a bonus today for showing up. Oh my, you know what I'm saying? I can't even.
You fixed that.
Yeah.
No, I fixed that. But today my elephant is to talk. I'm here to talk about equity and diversity. I think the conversation about diversity is coming up more than ever today. And a lot of times we focus primarily on just who's working at the company, just workforce numbers with EEO1, and we focus on the culture of the company. But the elephant for me in my role at TBWA, I've been here 6 years, is equity and diversity. And this is all of the vendors, all of the freelancers, all of the people that we're hiring to make commercial messages, producers, casting, set design. We need to be aware and conscious and add equity and diversity as part of our conversation, because the way that marketing and advertising is going is that we're going down the road of a gig-based and a project-based economy, and we have to realize that some of the most creative people that are coming into our doors and some of the most creative people that we're working with are starting in advertising and then going off to create their own companies, and it's our responsibility to talk about the diversity conversation in that light. And there's one statistic I want everyone in here to know. There are 30 million businesses in the United States of America today. 52% of every business in America is owned, operated, and controlled by either a woman or a person of color. But when it comes to B2B transactions, that 52% of the businesses only gets 4% of the money. So 96% of every dollar that every company spends in America goes to a company that is owned, operated, and controlled by a white male. and only 4% of that money goes to women and multicultural-owned businesses. So I challenge everybody here to don't just admire the problem and don't just pretend that the problem doesn't exist. We have to consciously go back and talk about that conversation. So at TBWA, over the last 5 years, we have spent almost $200 million with these businesses. And next month, we're launching a website called One Sandbox that everybody here can access that will have a list and directory of these companies, because we have to talk about equity and diversity and decision-making, not just people in the room making up a head count.
Thank you very much. Chris, what is your elephant?
Thank you, Margaret. So thank you for having me. You know, I spend most of my day thinking about money because I work at a bank. And when I first started, I heard this statistic that really shocked me. 40% of Americans don't have enough money for a $400 emergency. They would have to either sell something or borrow it. I want you to think about that. 40% of people, and it's such a huge number that to me, it's not possible to say that's not my demographic, that's not my target audience, because we all probably work for companies that have a lot of employees of different income scales, different ages, different ethnicities, different geographies. We work in communities, and you know, we also are part of a larger organization. I think this financial system, because we are marketing and selling products, and I think we have to recognize that. And I think that my big elephant is that the financial system is not benefiting most Americans. You know, we did research that shows 60% of people don't know the savings rate, their interest on their savings rate. 70% of people, according to the Pew Charitable Trust, experience some sort of financial crisis every year. And we need to do more as leaders, not as marketing leaders, but just as leaders, to help our employees, our customers, and our communities thrive. Because when they thrive, they're better employees, they make better decisions, they can be better to their families. And you look at the amount of credit card debt and student debt, both at an all-time high, and I think we're seeing the result of that, the result of not being a country that helps people make strong financial decisions.
Jodi.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me as well. I took a slightly different approach on my elephant, and it's actually, I find it odd that an elephant, this big, bold, beautiful animal, which means wisdom and strength and good fortune, has come to mean uncomfortable situations and burdens. So I found myself being my own elephant. Tell a little personal story. Last year, where I found, I was in a very burdensome situation, and I just wasn't feeling like a human being and happy at work. And which was strange because at the time I was the head of consumer insights at Anheuser-Busch for 3 years. The role most notably known for, connecting with humans and helping them find ways to be happy with our brands and our products. But working in such an intense environment, our industry, I'm sure many of you guys feel this, I was letting, that just anxiety overwhelm me. And, the routine was getting in the way. It was just depleting me. And, I was spending more time doing PowerPoint decks, and I'd become a whiz. I'm sure we all have, and defending brand health data on Excel spreadsheets, instead of getting out and meeting consumers and seeing how they live and connecting with them and trying to build relationships with them for our brands. I just felt depleted, and it showed. My team, our engagement was declining. I was working everybody to the bone, including myself. I barely saw my children, my husband. I was living from cookie to cookie, and I just lost my sense of self. I lost my purpose. Which was all about, opening up my eyes and being able to show others this rich world that we have, that we can connect with consumers. And so I decided to take a little bit of a break. I was speaking on panels. I was going to conferences. I was reading books. I mean, who gets to read books? Listen to podcasts. And just, nurturing myself and replenishing myself and not being ashamed to do that. And just found this great joy. And I have 1 minute. And it was thrilling. And I came back to the office and I thought, let me bring this joy back, because I wasn't alone. We were all living in this routine, feeling like robots, not talking to each other, fearful to rage against the machine, too proud to ask for help. And so I left Insights beginning of January this year, and I created this new function within marketing culture and learning, which is to bring a passion for learning and creativity to help grow ourselves and also grow the business. And it's starting to show in our work. We're actually being human again and having fun. And so, you know, and especially in an industry that so much needs, you know, human connection and that consumer knowledge and learning, it's okay to take a step back and take care of the one person that really matters most, and that's ourselves.
Marvelous. Thank you for sharing, Jodi. Jason.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm worried by how much my job sounds like your job used to be. So my elephant in the room is about diversity and how much we talk about diversity and all the different angles that we talk about diversity, but we very rarely talk about the most influential form of diversity. So what am I talking about? Let's fast forward a few years and all our organizations are super woke. So we're now represented gender, age, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, and we've got it right. But what's the next frontier? And the next frontier is what Harvard Business Review calls cognitive diversity. So diversity of thought or diversity of thinking. And it's starting to become a topic now. What does that mean? It's about how people approach problems and problem solving and how they tackle business issues and the processing styles and the processing individualities that they bring to work and to life. And why does that matter? Well, what the Harvard Business Review also did was comprehensively showed that teams which are cognitively diverse solve problems faster and better than teams which are not. So there are many industries where the same kinds of people congregate in those industries and their thinking styles all become very similar. Mm-hmm. And the opposite of that is actually a better way to solve problems. So cognitively diverse teams crack problems that cognitively teams that have what HBR calls functional bias. So their function leads them all to be the same kind of thinker. They either don't solve the problems at all, or they take longer, or their solutions aren't as good. So it really matters to have cognitively diverse teams. So what do we do about that? Well, there's two things, I think. There's a major and a minor. And the major is, I think we need some kind of testing when we're hiring people. We need good ways of assessing what people's cognitive styles and cognitive approaches are. And anybody out there who wants a business idea and is at a loose end in their life, if you can come up with something that actually successfully types people so that you can build diverse teams, I think you'll make a lot of money. And the second and minor thing is, and this comes from US Army recruitment data as much as that's one of the few things I could find. The other way to breed cognitive diversity into teams is hire diverse people. Mm. So you hire women and older people and people from different racial backgrounds and people from different educational backgrounds and people with different sexual orientations, because their life experience and their background has actually made them into a different kind of thinker. So actually we're right back where we started, and the hand of the clock comes all the way around. So that's why it would be a good thing to do that.
Marvelous. Thanks, Jason. So Gemma, you get the opportunity to bring together the last elephant in the room.
No pressure then. That's brilliant. I've loved all the elephants. Looking forward to the conversation. So it's okay not to be okay. We all talk about bringing our true self to the workplace, and we talk about how important that is to be authentic, to be real. But the uncomfortable truth, my elephant, is that most companies are not set up to allow you to be able to do that. It's great to be able to bring your corporate and your shiny and your glossy person to the workplace in order to be able to produce great results and be at your best. But actually, when you actually talk about issues that really affect us all, and we've touched on it all today, anxiety, depression, having a bad day, actually corporate environments are not set up on the whole to enable you to do that. 12% of employees feel unable to share mental health issues with their employers. So it's time as leaders, for us to create a safe space where we can remove the stigma around mental health, where we admit, as Ruby Wax coined at an event for us in London last year, it's okay not to be okay. And that's great, and that's fantastic, and together we can be our better selves. And as leaders, showing the way forward and creating an environment where you show vulnerability be fallible, admit your imperfections, so others get to be able to do that and empower people to be able to do that is so brilliant, and we're not doing enough of that. In the US, 200 million days, lost days for people that have mental health issues, where there's 200 million lost days. So that's, in terms of lost productivity, 17 to 44 billion dollars that we're wasting. So it makes commercial sense to be looking at our well-being. So it's time, as Margaret said at the beginning, to make the invisible visible. It's time to celebrate our differences. They're our superpowers. It's time to call it out and talk about the things that matter. Neurodiversity, our mental health, age, gender, because together we can really create change. And there's so much negativity around mental health. Physical health, you think of energy, you think of enthusiasm, you think of vibrancy. Mental health has negative connotations. It's time to switch that round, because actually, they say 1 in 4 suffers. It's more than that. It's all of us. We all are touched in some way, whether it's family, whether it's anxiety ourselves. It's time for us to be able to share and create spaces where we can be ourselves. And I have just run out of time. And I'm really strict with everyone else when I'm moderating, so I have to stop. But thank you. That's my elephant.
Thank you, Gemma. So fascinating. Now, we do please invite your questions. I believe the protocol is there through the app and will be projected to me on the screen. Time permitting, I'd be happy to handle those. But in the meantime, I have a couple of questions that come to me as I listen to each of you share so generously your elephants. And Doug, one that I want you to tackle is very timely, frankly. It's timely this week. It's been timely for some time this year, particularly in North America. About March of last year, we had WhatsApp advertising. Mm-hmm. Anyone in the room, does that resonate? It's a movement around particularly women bringing up the notion about sexual harassment in our sector. And many of us are in that sector. So what's happened, Doug? Where are we with that conversation?
Well, I think the conversation about, it's a national conversation, it's a global conversation that's hitting all over the world. So I was recently in Japan, and the movement over there is called We Too, because women unify together when they go to speak up. So all over the world in different pockets, the conversation about equality, respect, I think it goes to society's overall openness to the conversation. And it's really hit, I've had my role for 6 years, and 2 years ago when Oscars So White happened, there was so much more conversation about diversity from clients, from staff, from employees. So there's kind of moments in time that are revolution, and then past that, there's evolution. Time's Up advertising is obviously important. It's great that people are kind of pulling down their walls between holding companies and rivals to all unify. One of the unique things about diversity is that it is across corporate lines. So people are all working together. They're not necessarily saying, I'm better than you in this area. They're saying, let's work together in this area. So it's brought up the conversation. What I see at the agency is just an openness to communicate about the issue. To the point about bringing your whole self to work, 5-6 years ago, people couldn't really come to work and on a scale of this size and really feel comfortable talking about if something happened or, like you were saying, mental health issues. So it's all one and the same. It's part of intersectionality.
So we're at the conversation stage.
Yeah, well, we're at the conversation and we're at the action stage. Everybody's aware of it. Everybody's conscious of it. And at our agencies, I don't see it. When you go to other agencies, I think, many people at the agencies are woke or, in the know about conversations around equality and the issue for Time's Up advertising and the issue for mental health and the issue for diversity. It's all kind of one kind of moment of intersectionality where all these issues are all coming to the forefront and the light at the same time. And it's kind of like working out. You can't just lose weight in your left arm, because you can't just do spot weight loss. You have to change your whole body and your whole diet. And I think that's happening across all the conversations. And I think as it relates to Time's Up advertising, that's a real big part of it.
Marvelous, thank you. So Gemma, one of my observations is the mental health agenda seems to be further along in the UK from observation. At least it's more a part of the national conversation. Why do you think that is, and what are your thoughts vis-a-vis North America and beyond?
So I think the reason for that is because really high-profile people, like the royals, so Prince Harry, did an interview with The Telegraph last year, I think it was March time, about his own anxiety and mental health issues. And other high-profile people followed that suit. So they were prepared to share, they were prepared to be vulnerable, and they were prepared to talk about the things that you can't see, because you can't see our brain. We can see physical, if someone's, broken their arm, you can see that. You can't see, if someone's suffering. So I think when people are prepared to share, and people are prepared to create spaces where we can have the conversations, which is what we've been doing in London, and we took mental health to the stage for the first time in Dubai. You create those spaces where you can have those conversations, and people start talking about it. We can start to make change together, and I don't think we've done enough of that here, which is why it's something that I feel so passionate about. That it's time to lift that lid and to be talking about it, because it's only when you start to do that that we can create change, and we can create change together.
Interestingly, Jodi, listening to your discussion, which is more in the professional, functional domain, it strikes me that a theme that you're touching is that an ironic one. As marketers, we're supposed to be creative, and yet you felt an opportunity to replenish your creativity. How has that been received, and have others taken your example?
Yeah, so we, Chris and I are actually just chatting about this. We've previously walked away from all of our capability programming. So growth and development was just left to our human resources organization. And so the programming was quite generic. And even the way that we are set up from a hierarchical perspective, we worked in silos, right? We weren't collaborating. And when you can bring people together to collaborate and start talking in a very safe environment, we even created our own little room. Judgment-free, where people can come in, test drive their ideas, feel like they weren't, being, put against the firing squad. Slowly over time, it starts to change your culture. Slowly over time, you start to build confidence in others, build confidence in people, build confidence in your partners, and the work. You could see the work starting to become better as well. So, myself stepping aside and starting to bring these programs back, and not just, how to write a brief 101 or how to judge creativity 101, but really thinking about innovative ways to do marketing and connecting us to the outside world. So one of the things that we do each month, we stop marketing, we bring everybody together for 2 to 3 hours, and we have what's called a spark session. And we bring in big provocative speakers, CMOs, CEOs from other companies, to come in and teach us something new. And then we play around with it for a little bit, pilot it in a very safe space, and then we break the machine and build it into the new machine. And it's almost like, we're piloting as we're moving along, and eventually over time we'll create something new. But we've got this new spirit, this new energy. We say hello to each other in the halls now. We know each other's birthdays. So it's refreshing.
And these are spark sessions.
Spark, yeah.
Marvelous. What a good branding. So Jason, you touched deeply on diversity of thought as being the next frontier. Anything practical that's happening at Diageo that's institutionalizing that desire?
So I think we're probably still in the first phase of actually trying to become more diverse before we, in the kind of more traditional sense, before we tackle diversity of thought more formally. The only thing, I've had a real couple of sleepless night type issues with potential hirings in the past year, where the choice came down to someone diverse and someone not diverse, and I guess for me, the issue had always been a bit abstract before. It had always been a slightly sort of academic thing that didn't necessarily affect me, and all of a sudden there I was with a choice to make, and thinking, if I if I don't give this job to this diverse candidate, in 15 or 20 years' time, that candidate will not be there to be a lighthouse to that person's younger self looking up, right? So unless you do it now, when's it going to happen? And if you just go, well, he or she's not quite as good and doesn't have quite the experience and doesn't have quite the polish. But if you keep making that decision every time the safe way, there'll never be a role model. There'll never be role models for the people coming through after. And it just, I mean, I know that's a really obvious thing to say, but it just hit me in the face really hard all of a sudden because I'm lazy. I was too lazy to think about it before. And then it suddenly was there and I was forced to think about it. And it made a really big impression on me and kind of raised my interest level in this whole topic massively. The only other thing I want to add, what Chris was saying about the income that people in this country have to fall back on, I'd seen that stat and it killed me. The other one that killed me even more was the average worth of a Caucasian household in America. That is to say, what would the value be of everything that household owns if you liquidized it? The average value of a Caucasian household is somewhere in the region of $140,000. That's what their life is effectively worth, right? Everything they own, all the assets. The average value of a black household is about $11,500. So about 11 times less than the average Caucasian household. And I had to kind of read it 2 or 3 times because it's such an uncomfortable thing to read. And it really shocked me, and so thank you for reminding me about that little phase of fact-finding that I went through, because that stat was in there and it reminded me of it. Yeah. And it makes me think, you need people of different backgrounds, because especially if you want to do marketing to everybody, because you need people who've been through those kinds of things to talk to people who are going through those kinds of things. So you have to have those things.
Margaret, can I add to that really fast?
Please, Chris.
Because I think what you're saying is really interesting. I'm in the middle of hiring new advertising agencies for a piece of business, and the conversation we had yesterday was, we want someone to challenge us and to pull us forward. And I don't know that we have that same internal process when we hire people or even think about training people. I think you're right. If you hire someone who's like you, which is incredibly comfortable, you'll have the same conversation. It won't be so challenging. They'll do the PowerPoint exactly the way you would do the PowerPoint. But I think you lose something. I think you lose opportunity when you don't hire someone who makes you internally who challenges you, either because they don't have the same skills, they don't have the same experience, they have a different background, different industry even, and I think that's a missed opportunity. But you have to accept, if you're going to go down that road, that you're going to go home some days to your significant other and go, that person's driving me nuts, right? I just don't get where they're coming from. And it's not just like the word challenge written on a piece of paper. It's going to be something that eats you, right? It's going to be something hard in life. And that's what you're going to go. You've got to kind of accept that that's going to happen and psych yourself up for it. And I'm not saying I've done it, right? I'm not saying you have to do this, Chris, right? I just mean one has to get to that place if one's really going to embrace doing that, I think. Absolutely.
And I think that's our role as leaders today, right? You can't lead just by filling out a PowerPoint anymore or being able to present your numbers. You have to be brave and champion and challenge people and, carry all of our industries forward.
And it's visceral, isn't it? And I think marketers, we're uniquely equipped to do that, because when we are our best selves, we have empathy. And when you're empathetic, it becomes visceral. But the challenge for us is to manage the short term and the long term. Because I think listening to your insights, it would appear that the benefits accrue over the long term. If we just keep at this, we'll end up with better thought, better output, enhanced creativity, but the short-term burden of getting that PowerPoint done is still there. So to Jodi's reconciliation of the issue, it's balancing our functional competencies with our leadership and having that voice at the other table with our executive management to suggest that maybe the lens through which we're looking at the problem might be a little flawed.
Yeah.
So Chris, sorry, Doug. I'm just going to double click with Chris just briefly on the financial issue, because it seems so pertinent. If we're talking about mental health, diversity of thought, diversity in all its instantiations, there's a certain fundamental requirement people have to put bread on the table.
Right.
So is there something, or what's up with the financial institutions? It sounds like our financial system is badly broken.
I hate to just blame the banks, one, because I work for one, and two, because I think that it has to start earlier than that. I was thinking about, I don't stand here saying as marketers we should all focus on educating our consumers on not buying our products, because that's just not going to make any sense. But I think there's an opportunity to do an and versus an or. And I'll give you a very personal example. I was thinking back to my high school days. I took advanced placement sociology, which was super useful in my financial literacy experience, right? But absolutely no classes on financial management, how to balance a checkbook, how to think of a credit card, what a credit card rate is. And even as I became involved in the business world, I remember so many leaders not wanting to share our P&L, because our P&L is something that is somehow sacred. And you can't know how much money we're making or how we make money. But I think that removing ourselves from those kinds of conversations actually makes it difficult for us to understand how money operates. And more people are comfortable talking about erectile dysfunction than credit card debt.
Tweet that.
Wow.
That's a tweetable moment.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And that's my own personal quote, not a quote from Goldman Sachs. But I think we just have to remove.
Be careful how much you claim that quote.
we have to be careful. We have to remove the stigma of talking about money and to the point of supporting each other, whether we are not our best selves at work or not our best selves at home. I think it often has to relate with emotional issues, and money is the most emotional topic. It is the longest relationship you have. Think about that, right? And that's really important.
Can
Doug,
I just add something? I think Chris is absolutely right. The whole infrastructure that perpetuates these economic disparities has its roots so deep in, I'd say, American society, which is not unique to America at all, right? Other societies have it just as much, but it goes to where people can afford to live, the kinds of benefits and the kinds of amenities and the kinds of resources that are available to them. It even goes down to the kind of food they can afford to eat and the kind of food that's sold anywhere near where they live. It is all pervasive, and the way that society is set up is to perpetuate the maintenance of those who have more having even more, and those who have less having less.
So I know, Doug, you don't like the status quo.
Yeah, no, the comment I was going to say is that, when I started at TBWA 6 years ago for this role called Chief Diversity Officer, I had never heard of the role, and nor I didn't really know what the role meant. And when they interviewed me, they explained to me that they had interviewed 5 Chief Diversity Officers from other companies and some guy who never did it before, which was me. And when we went through the interview process, it came down to 2 people, and the executive team voted on it, and they picked the person who had never done it before versus the person that had already done it. And months later, when they explained to me how the process worked, they said, if you want to make change on an issue, you should hire someone from another industry or with different perspective, not hire someone who did the same job at another company that's going to come over here and do the same job. But you have to give benefit of the doubt to the difference. Where as people that interview, we always give benefit of the doubt to the similarity. And it just starts, I think, with that small decision in your mind where you say, this person's a little bit different and not everything can be measured. It factors or that, kind of emotion or energy someone brings, and try to hire different people from different industries. We find a lot of success at our agency with people that we define as slashers. So these are people that are really passionate about advertising, worked in another industry, worked in another field, and they bring just a different energy to the table. But you're right, if you don't make the decision, who makes the decision? So I think it's a good way to look at it, is just kind of give difference to the benefit of the doubt.
So as we move toward the end of the time, I'm going to try a tweetable moment opportunity. So remember when Twitter was 140 characters?
Oh.
So we're going to start with you, Doug, and we're going to go right down the line.
My tweetable moment was, educate yourself to not say, I don't know. Don't say, I don't know. No.
Hashtag.
Yeah, no. Find it.
Love that.
Do it, make it happen, and I would also say balanced leadership. You can hashtag that too, because I think that's very
I
important.
think you've gone past your 140 characters.
Yeah, I know. Well, I went backspace a couple times.
All right. Chris.
Oh, this is tough. I think that my hashable moment, or my tweetable moment would be.
Well, I think the erectile dysfunction one.
You know, maybe,
I'm not going to speak for the room here, but I think this pretty much, I think it's too late.
I would say check all the interest rates on everything that you own.
Now that's practical.
Check all your interest rates.
Wow. We weren't prepared for this one. I talk a lot about using, and I coach individuals at our organization to use your voice. I also lead our Women in Beer community group. So I'm looking at an elephant. I guess, use your trumpet, right? Use the trumpet to make a difference.
Beautiful.
Don't let that elephant be the negative connotation of a big, beautiful, powerful animal of strength and fortune.
Thank you.
Start practicing what it feels like to be really uncomfortable. Start finding ways to feel really uncomfortable so that when it comes to hiring somebody who makes you really uncomfortable, you're at least a little bit prepared.
Nice. Be brave enough to admit your vulnerabilities. Be brave enough to ask for a mental health day. You do it, more people will do it. Can create that space where people can truly be themselves. 140.
Beautiful, Gemma. So in wrapping up our panel this morning and in thanking our panelists for bravely sharing their issues, we traversed diversity of thought, financial and mental well-being, and the importance of replenishing our creativity. And it strikes me that this topic defies summation, so I won't try to sum it up. But I will say that we bring to it, as marketers, a unique set of skills. And that perspective is required. We talked about empathy. Often, as marketers, we're so caught up in the functional. We forget to step back and look at the cultural context against which we are practicing our craft. These issues are too important to go unexamined. We have the skills and the responsibility to make the invisible visible. Our contribution to this conversation is as marketers. Mine is a marketer's relationship with these elephants. Now, as marketers, we typically have a very robust toolkit. We often bring storytelling, culminating in a call to action from our repertoire. So here is my call to action to all of you. If you feel the impulse to be a brave marketer, if you want to have uncomfortable conversations in safe places, if you want to push important agendas forward and make a difference on a global scale, I invite you to apply for membership of the Marketing Society. Because as marketers, we're also salespeople. And we know that to make change, one of our most effective tools is to convene as a group. Our conference is coming up. We have a conference on November 14th here in New York, and we invite all of you to consider membership and to be part of that conversation. Thank you for being a wonderful audience, and big, big thanks to our tremendously brave panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.